Okay, good evening, everybody. It's 6:15, so we'll go and get started with the regular Manvel Planning Development and Zoning Commission meeting for tonight. Start with roll call. Ryan Miller, that's me, I'm here. Kyle Maraskin.
Here.
Marianne Atkinson.
Here.
Kenneth Haynes. Christy Kennard is out this evening. Dorothy Wayne. And Muhammad Alam. Here. Excellent. Do we have any comment cards for tonight? No? And the pledge actually isn't even on the agenda, so we'll skip over them since we just did them. So up first is our consent agenda, which has 6 items. Approve the final plat for Valencia Section 2. Approve the final plat for Valencia Section 4. Approve the final plat for Meridiana Section 13A. Approve the final plat for Meridiana Section 24A. Approve the final plat for Pomona Section 26, and approve the meeting minutes to date. Is everybody okay with proceeding with that, or would you like to pull anything out? Motion
to approve.
I second that.
And all in favor? Motion carries unanimously, 6-0. Excellent. Okay, on to the regular agenda. Consideration and possible action to approve preliminary plat for Valencia Lake B. Joseph?
Good evening, everybody. This is a preliminary plat for Valencia Lake B. And this plat was previously presented, it was approved, but then the approval expired, so the applicant is submitting again. On this plat, there were a few additional information included compared to the previous preliminary plat, and we noticed one deficiency, and therefore staff is recommending conditional approval with a comment with that one condition that the proposed plat includes a drilling site. They are required to revise note number 22 on the plat to elaborate that drilling within the drilling site shall be confined to Reserve A, and all drilling activity shall be in conformance with Chapter 35, Article 5 of the City of Manvel Code of Ordinances.
Excellent. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions, concerns?
Since I'm new at this, I apologize. What exactly is the drilling for if they're making a pond? Is it for digging it out, or is there actual drilling going on?
There isn't any drilling going on. We have the applicant here. The applicant can also answer the question. The plat includes a reserve which will be used it would be open play area with landscaping, and there would be a little bit of drainage component to it. However, there are mineral rights on that particular reserve. Go ahead and explain that.
Yes, sir.
Ryan Edwards with LJA. So the drill site is for the mineral rights to be able to access those. The area is going to be a dry detention pond. So if they ever want to drill in the future, whoever could drill with a permit from the city, that's where they would drill.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional questions? Any motions?
I'll make a motion to pass with conditional approval. Did I say that right? Okay.
A second.
All those in favor of conditional approval? And any opposed? No. So motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Okay, consideration and possible action to approve and forward with recommendation to City Council Ordinance 2023-0-40, which was the public hearing from earlier. So I will go ahead and open with a question. Who's the best one to address?
Depends on the question.
Okay, so why so many requirements for engineering drawings, even on things like wood fences?
So, if I remember correctly, the whole engineering component comes after if the fence is more than 6 feet tall.
I mean, all the perimeter fences for these subdivisions are all more than 6 feet tall. with little exception.
Okay. Question is, why do we have that engineering requirement on that?
The engineering component, I think, came up as a result of some failure of some perimeter community fencing. And I think someone who was here for the public hearing mentioned in Newport Lake Estates with the masonry wall falling down. And then we've also had some issues with some of the perimeter fencing in the Lakeland community. So combined with that, council gave staff some direction that, one, they wanted to see a permit for a fence, and secondly, they wanted some standards associated with that. I believe the building code is what states it's something is over 6 feet in height that has to be engineered. To give you a frame of reference, signage that's over 6 feet in height also would have an engineer's stamp on it with some wind load calculations, letting us know it's not gonna necessarily blow over in a tropical storm, maybe. But just so that the integrity is there.
And I definitely see that for, masonry fences, wood fences that are taller than, I don't know, throw a number out there, 7 or 8 feet. All these other kinds of fences, I definitely see the need for that. But wood fences are one of the most predominant types of fences out there. And they're already expensive to maintain, and you start throwing in, engineering drawings, you're taking the per foot cost up from $35 to $37 a foot now, and you're adding another $10,000 on top of that to get somebody to stamp it, and that's going to be very, very cost prohibitive for a lot of these HOAs, because, and that's not just a developer cost, that's going to be an ongoing cost for, at least the way it looks like it's written. If it needs to be replaced, then it has to be recertified.
So, in terms of wooden fences, what was mentioned about the rod board and the top cap, that will not be calculated in the 6 feet height calculation. So if a top cap is added and the rod board, if it's a wooden fence, it has a rod board and it has a top cap, it is 6 feet if the pickets are 6 feet. That's how it is calculated. So if you're adding a 6-foot fence or putting in a new 6-foot fence, you don't need an engineering stamp. The engineering drawing is only when you have concrete footing and masonry fence only for community fencing. So for wooden fences, if the fences that you said would be more than 6 feet is based on the rod board and the top cat and standard 6-foot pickets, it wouldn't require based on how it is written, but these are all good inputs. We can definitely make changes to accommodate.
If you can, you don't have to do it right now, but if you could just tell me where in there it specifies those
Yeah,
things.
because this sounds like new math to me. So the rot board on the bottom and the top board that are going to make it more than 6 feet are really not going to make it more than 6 feet.
So the language, the way it is written is, design and construction. Wooden fence construction shall include fence posts with concrete footing and rod boards. The total height of wooden fences may exceed the maximum allowed height by 6 inches. Top cap not exceeding 2 inches in height may be added to wooden fences and shall not contribute to total fence height calculation.
Okay, so it's only allowing for 2 inches for the top cap and 6 inches.
So you've
So
already gone over.
you're only allowing for another 8
inches.
8 inches total.
Yeah,
And that's, I don't know, new math.
yeah, because depending on the landscape, the grade, there are certain areas where the rot board's going to be. It may vary from 6 inches here, and it may be 3 feet over here because of drainage culverts and stuff like that. There's several examples I can
Would it make
point
it
out.
better if we take off the 6 inches and the 2 inches for the rod board and top cap?
Yeah, I would either allow them or disallow them. I wouldn't put a specific number on them just because there's so much
So
variation there.
if you take out the 6 inches for the rot board, and I don't build a lot of fence, so bear with me, But if you take out the 6 inches for the rock board and the top cap, you don't have a secure fence anyway.
And you've taken out the height
6 foot
requirement
fence,
as
that's what
well.
I-
You have a 6-foot fence,
mean-
but you got nothing, you're gonna, that fence is
And,
gonna fall
I
down
mean,
sooner
the
than
top
later
cap
anyway.
is
I
just
don't-
decorative. The rock board is also not necessarily a structural item. It's designed to be replaced more often. It's designed to be sacrificial.
Correct, right. So it's
So
not a,
I mean, to me, I would set more of a standard for wooden fences as, you know, a fence that's going to be, you know, 6 to 7 feet tall. You know, it can't be built with, it has to have at least 24 inches in the ground set in concrete, and, you know, the post itself can't be more than 10 feet tall. You know, I'm just pulling numbers out of the air here, but
where,
you know, that's allows for the whole system. There, you know, there's 12 inches of allowance in there for rock board or top cap or whatever. You can mix and match it however you'd like. And it also sets a standard for the non-engineered ones of how much, you know, how deep the footing is for it too.
how'd you come up with 6 feet? How does 6 feet come into this?
Standard picket size.
Because we
from
have
6 feet.
fencing that in Lakeland that is 6 feet tall that fell down because they put it on 8-foot posts with a 2-inch top cap and a 6-inch rock board. We left
the
10
footing.
inches in the ground. So there was nothing holding it up. So I don't think that really solves the,
So this particular amendment, like the fence aspect of this whole zone, it was from input that city council received from general public about substandard quality of fences where there's no permit. We currently do not have a permit requirement, and nobody's inspecting the fences. A lot of time, the construction, the fence posts do not use a concrete footing or any solid footing. The post is just put in the ground. And eventually, there's no rot board, and it kind of reduced the lifespan of the fence. And once the builder puts it in and leaves, then it's on the resident, and the maintenance responsibility is higher.
Right.
So
And-
the goal was to include a permit requirement, go with the same height restrictions that we have on the residential side at least. However, allow for wood fences to go more than 6 feet, but not more than, like, if we allow the rot board and top cap, somebody creatively can come up with a 1-foot wide rot board and go with taller fence, which is also not desirable where you're having like these forts put up around the houses. So without changing the height restriction, give this allowance for rot board, make rot board a requirement, provide the allowance for a top cap. That was the goal.
right.
In terms of that.
And just to clarify one thing there real quick, from the way I read it, and maybe I read it too quickly, was it appeared that residential lots are excluded from this. It really is just aimed at subdivisions, because agriculture fencing was excluded,
That is correct.
and then the individual residential lots were excluded, but a subdivision perimeter fence is included.
Not exactly. So residential fence is included, but we have a distinction about the community fencing and other regular wooden fences. In terms of construction standards, if it is a wooden fence, the standards is same for residential as well as non-residential.
Okay.
Which is like the requirement for concrete in the post, rot board, and then if a top cap is also added, with the rod board and top cap, we still look at picket for the 6-inch fence. We don't want a situation where somebody added a top cap and it's 2 inches more than 6 feet, and now we require them, oh, this is not allowed. You have to cut the pickets by 2 inches to make it 6 feet. So that was the goal.
Yeah,
So this does include a regular residential lot, just Joe Brown.
Yeah, if it is a wooden fence, a new wooden fence being put, there would be a permitting requirement. The posts will have to have a concrete base, and you have to have a rod board as well on wooden fences.
do you know what page by chance that list of requirements is on?
It would be item 4 under design and construction standards, 77-43, item 4.
What page number
Page
is it?
number 28 of 47. It's item, yeah, if you look at the red line, you will be able to see. It's item E.
Okay.
So, Joe, is it also your, you all's point for if they have to make repairs to a fence, they have to pull a permit for that as well?
Not for minor repair and maintenance.
Oh, okay, so repairs are,
But if new section of a fence is being added, if fence is being relocated.
Okay.
At that point, a permit is required to make sure that it
Okay,
is done the right way.
okay.
Or just replacing? Like for like?
A complete,
Like a complete
Replacement.
rebuild?
I believe a permit would be required.
Okay.
To make sure that the height is accurate.
Okay, I'm going to be nitpicky here for just a second. What if you have a chain link fence, and you're not replacing the post, but you're replacing the whole line of chain link? Would that be considered as unusual maintenance and repair?
If it's an agricultural property and like a large acreage property with more than 2 acres, then that is completely exempt. We do not regulate the material, we do not regulate the installation of it.
And would it possibly help if, under number 4, where it says community fences shall have a minimum height of 6 feet, what about picket height, 6 feet? I'm just throwing that out there. Because like, it was kind of confusing, because you say 6 feet, but then you add the rock board and the top cap, so.
But we provide that clarification under wooden construction, so all the community fence wouldn't be wooden fence. There are some community fences which could be masonry also. So that's why we provided a minimum height, fence height, and then for wooden construction, we clarify that in case of a wooden fence, the 6 feet calculation or for residential, the 6 feet height calculation would also include your, the top cap and the rod board will not be calculated. It'll be the picket.
So just reading that, I mean, my takeaway from this is still, the 6-foot pickets, that it has to be constructed with the 6-foot pickets in there, I think that's fine. I still see a problem that it says a concrete footing, but it doesn't give you a depth, a minimum depth for that.
And that is why we have the requirement of that engineering requirement for community fences, which is like large stretch.
Right. But under wooden fences, even for community fences, if it's not over 6 feet tall, you don't have an engineering drawing, correct?
No.
So even with that, I mean, I think to solve one of the problems that you're attempting to solve would need to specify a minimum, footing depth for
That's what your
those
engineer's
fences.
gonna do.
Huh?
If you have to pull a permit with an engineer, he's going to tell
No,
you.
this would be under the unengineered ones that are under the 6 foot.
Oh,
Because if you put
So you're
a top, if you do the 6 foot pickets with rock board and top cap and you put it on an 8 foot post, there's nothing in the ground. You can still put a concrete footing in there.
But he'd have to
It's
have-
not going to have anything to hold on to, but
but they'd have to have a permit for that.
no.
If it were under, you're saying you do,
If it falls within the definition of your 6 foot pickets, 2-inch top cap, 6-inch rock board, you put that on an 8 foot post, which is the common post, you've got like 13 inches in the
yeah,
ground.
you're right.
So one of the reasons why it is not included is so that our building team who is reviewing it can use best practice to allow for whatever depth is needed based on the location, based on the height, based on whatever, because one size may be an overkill in certain situations, I'm not sure.
Like I said, I would include a minimum. Because if I'm reading this and I'm putting together a document to submit for a permit, then I want to know at least where I've got to start. If you tell me I got to go 2 inches deeper when they look at it, great, but yeah. Because like I said, that's
So you want him to say that it needs to be a 10-foot post no matter where it is?
not necessarily a 10 foot post. just-
Whatever, however many feet you want it to be.
It's what you're
You
gonna
want
have.
2 to 4 feet.
That's what you're
whatever,
gonna
how many- However, you want to specify how many feet you want it into ground under a certain amount.
Yeah, you need at least 15 inches in the ground, something like that. You're going to end up buying a 10 foot post.
Normal people would,
Yeah.
but you're right. That's why they're having trouble with the developers. It's because they're not normal people.
Okay. Who else has questions?
So just for my clarification, just since something new for me in here. So city does allow 6 inches right now, right? 6
6
inches
feet.
above the 6
feet?
feet. I mean, like there is definitely you have to have give us some number to make it like in wiggle, maybe like 6 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches. It cannot be
So are we,
exactly fixed.
so are we talking, so let's step, looks
Step
like
back.
there's a little bit of
I
confusion on
understand.
my end, little bit of confusion. So residential, if we are strictly talking about residential
I think we're
fences,
talking residential, right?
what is that?
We're talking about residential,
Yes,
back, right?
so if we're strictly talking about the residential fence, right now the allowance is your fence has to be a maximum of 6 feet unless it's a community fence where it can go up to 8 feet.
Right.
Now, if that fence is a wooden fence, that 6 feet will not count your top cap and your rod board. Rod board up to 6 inches and top cap up to 2 inches, which is like standard practice generally, but depending on the grade, as Ryan mentioned, there may be certain positions where it may have to go more than 6 feet. But that is the allowance. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's answer my question.
6 foot 8.
Just still
6 foot
wondering,
8.
actually, if they want to put the, footings in the bottom, and which is, as you said, is not calculating as part of the 6 feet measurement, because if you go in Home Depot or anywhere, those are, I did a small job for fencing, and it comes standard size.
Yeah.
Basically. It comes 6 feet or
Yeah.
8 feet, you're hardly to find. So I still don't get it really. I think that the whole rules was written in the city's regulation sounds like sufficient to help developer or builders if they need to go like any footings higher or lower, it's just fine. I'm still struggling myself, what really they want to change in here to make them to go, certain variation. I'm not so sure. So that's my struggling is right now. Did you get my point?
So,
I'm not 100% sure.
okay, so if you have a 6-foot picket,
Right.
and say you want to put 12 inches on the rock board, that's not going to count because you're only talking about the
Exactly.
6-inch picket, or
Well,
6 feet picket. So if you want to put 12 inches as a rock board and then your 2 top,
Yeah.
that would be okay because the picket's only 6 foot.
Correct.
That's correct, right? Okay.
So,
So
you could
currently,
possibly get a
for
higher
fences, we
fence.
don't have a permit requirement. We do not permit. We do not have inspections. We do not review. But as a result, the input we are getting is that there are fences that are substandard and they have reduced life. And there's, especially when, like some of the builders, some of the not all builders, not all projects, some builders, the fences that they put in is not able to have the full lifespan it needs to because of the absence of a rod board. The pickets get deteriorated. The footing, there's no concrete footing. The wooden post is stuck right in the ground. They rot. Sometimes they are not stable, as you said. The fence it topples down. To adjust that, the number one thing we had to do was put in a fence permit requirement, which is the first thing that's included. Number two, when we put fence height requirements, like when we say 6 feet height, which is currently what we have in our ordinance, that your maximum height is 6 inch. But if you put in your permit and inspection, like one of the input we got, there are some developers, some builders, some homeowners who would want to put a top cap and a rod board. The standard pickets, if it's 6 inch, we don't want inspections, or we don't want a situation when we are reviewing permit, you cannot have that now. You have to cut your picket 2 inches to accommodate your rod board or whatever you need to accommodate. So that's why those allowances are included, and not to complicate or not to achieve a certain specific variation of the fencing, if that's what your question was.
yeah, so basically you're looking to limit the area or limit the height on the bottom.
The height limitation is there even now. It's just that we don't permit it, so we don't inspect it. The only time those things get caught is when code enforcement sees something which is noticeably taller than 6 feet. So the reason for including that language about the rod board requirement was so that wooden fences have a better quality and has a little more lifespan. The allowance to add a 2-inch top cap was to not complicate the height requirement.
Is it beside that having like, I know that there is a different as wood or metals, I'm not sure. You might have a list of the types of the fencing.
Correct.
And some of the types are better than the others. So I guess those are kind of engineering or subject matter expert people's opinion could be.
Yeah.
And
So we don't get into those. So on the fencing on the residential side, if we go by one item by item, the first item says, single-family residential zoning district, it shall not exceed 6 feet in height, which is our current standard. We are not changing anything of that sort. It also allows for community fences to go exceed up to 8 feet. So community fencing can go up to 8 feet. We've added a language which says that you have to have at least 6 feet when it's a community fence. Because that language is not captured. We don't want a situation where you have a major thoroughfare, you have a community fence, for some reason it gets dropped off, and the homeowner doesn't have a choice if they are backing onto a major thoroughfare. For other zoning districts, all that we've added is that if there are residential uses in a non-residential district, they can follow whatever applies to residential district. Because the commercial side, there's allowance for 8 feet fencing height. So, but if they have an option, if they would want to go lower, they can go. We just added that language for clarification. After that, we've included language, which is already existing. We've included language to make the exemption of agricultural properties and agricultural fencing. We've included that clarification. We've added a language for to not allow opaque fencing for vacant properties to avoid situations where you're completely closing out property and code enforcement and police related monitoring will have an impact because of opaque fence. Then we provide that language that clarifies specifically for wooden construction, where even though we say that you're not allowed to exceed 6 feet with the rod board and your top cap, it can go over 6 feet. Then we have a language which clarifies that when the fence is facing the street, the finished side should be facing the street. And then we have a language which says concrete footing which is required in the construction of community fences or any masonry fence shall be designed by a professional engineer licensed in the state.
So on that one, the way that's written, it sounds like even wooden fencing you're saying.
Yes, wooden fences, but it's only for the posts. And that being with a consideration that now you're looking at larger spans. And most of these fences, the first time it is being constructed, it would be as part of a complete plan set, which already has engineers involved.
Right, but for existing ones that have to be replaced, that's a considerable expense to get somebody to sign off and say, put some concrete in the hole.
And community fences are defined in a way that those are fences which are maintained by either the HOA or
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so it's not on individual homeowners, but yeah, we can definitely.
I mean, it is on the individual homeowners because that's ultimately who ends up paying for it.
So we can add an exemption for wooden fence on that? If that's
Yeah, I
what
mean-
the suggestion is.
At least for, I don't know, reconstruction, but something.
So I do see in the literature here, I do see the information in regards to the height of the top cap and the height of the pickets. However, there's no height specified for the rot boards, unless I'm missing it somewhere.
So it says 6 inches for the rod board. Top cap is 2 inches.
So are those maximums? Are those maximums?
Yes. Because if we don't put a limit on that, then you can go up to 7 feet. So you might as well change the height allowance to 7 feet, but that may not be a good idea when you're using other materials.
Gotcha.
So, to answer your question, under E, the total height of the wooden fence, may exceed the allowed height by 6 inches. That's where you're getting that from for the rot board.
The rod board.
Okay, all right.
You said that total could be 8 inches.
And then it has another line that says the top cap doesn't count,
Not exceed
up to 2.
inches.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to muddy the water with it, but going back to community fences with the HOAs and the engineering, this is what brought it to staff, was how it came from council, was honestly specifically for those reasons for the community fences that previous developers had constructed not, to standards. So that was the main goal with it wasn't to just, I think, maybe necessarily, permit the world on some of this stuff, but just have some sort of assurance. And unfortunately for some of our existing communities, if we don't have some of those fences that were necessarily done right, then now we're having to go after the fact to replace those. But what we would like to prevent going forward is this doesn't happen again to any other future homeowners. I know that's not what everybody wants to hear, but that was why it's presented in this manner.
Yeah, and the permitting, I understand, but, if you go look for wooden fences, things that, one of the most common types of fencing out there are well-established standards that, you can include in here. Doesn't require an engineering stamp. Somebody's already done that work. If you go to somebody and ask for an engineering stamp, they're going to copy it out of a book somewhere, and charge you 10 grand for it. So that's a problem.
So here's, the language can be a little more clear, but I guess the way that item G was intended is, like, if we look at the application material, and as Jessica clarified, anything that is 6 feet and above needs an engineering stamp, just to make sure it can withstand wind, it can have the stability, it has the sufficient footing. That is number one. Number two, what this language says is any concrete footing required in the construction of community fences. And you have to remember that community fences can go up to 8 feet.
Correct.
So if a fence is under 6 feet, the engineering stamp doesn't get triggered. It is only, and maybe we can clarify it a little better, because what the intent is, like, if there is a requirement for concrete footing based on engineering, then it's required, but we'll
Yeah, I mean,
clarify that.
it says all concrete footings required for constructions of community fences. So if it's a community fence, sure, it can go up to 8 feet, but right there, even if it is just 6 feet, you're still requiring it.
Correct. So we'll change that language to provide that exemption.
Who else?
Well, I mean, I know you've had the issues with fences falling. My thing is, I don't live in an HOA, so I can't tell you how that works. Who pays for it?
Homeowner.
Does it go to the homeowner?
Yeah.
Okay.
It comes out of the annual
So if you've got
assessment or
10
special assessment.
across that fence line, you've got 10 homeowners.
It gets spread across the entire subdivision, but
Okay. So I can kind of see the need for that. I mean,
So I live in Rodeo Palm, and I have 4 neighbors around me. And anytime something broke down, I have to fix it. So I guess, I'm not sure actually how the builders and the actually are responsible for that. I have to fix it.
yeah, and it does depend on whether it's the community fence or the shared fencing, between properties.
Right, it's still
be
the
different, but
homeowners.
yeah.
Even I seen that the people who living next to the 288 side even, who's like, nowhere is in behind, but it's still, I think they are homeowners that are responsible for the fence fall down. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if Jessica will say something. Go
It depends on how it was platted, yeah.
I think it would be dependent on HOA and how that's spelled out in deed restrictions and such. So I know in the community I live in, if somebody runs through one of our fences and puts a car through it, the whole community's paying to replace that masonry fence that came down. But if the fence is falling in my backyard, then I'm responsible for that cost.
Yeah, like for Lakeland, every section has a fence plan that identifies the community fencing, residential fencing, and then defines all of them as part of the plat, so.
So the solution I'm hearing from the commission is that in case of wooden fences, provide a minimum depth for the wooden post and concrete, and do not include a requirement for an engineering stamp specifically for wooden fence, even if it goes over 6 feet.
Yeah.
That's what,
Or at 6 feet for community fencing.
yeah.
Right, no engineering stamp required for that type of fencing. If it's at 8 feet, yeah, I mean, that's fine. But 6 feet, no, it shouldn't be for a community, just for any wooden fence, because they're all gonna,
Cap.
Okay.
So your cap is at 8 foot?
6 for
Oh,
the.
it's 6.
Yeah. It just here, it's calling
Come
for,
up with a minimum depth.
Yeah,
Here-
I think we're on different pages.
no,
So,
here it's calling for community fences, period, need an engineering stamp. But if you have a 6-foot wooden community fence, it should not require a stamp.
What if it's a 7-foot wooden community fence? Do you still think that an engineering stamp is an overkill?
yeah.
My first choice would be a stronger standard, a stronger minimum built in here, but failing that, then yes, an engineering stamp.
I think anything over the standard 6 feet should be engineering stamp, because you can go to Home Depot and get 6 feet. If you want something more than that, you're gonna have to special order. So you're already there.
Oh, yeah. 6 and 8-foot pickets are standard.
Standard. 6 is the standard. I mean, you can get it, it'll be a
Well,
special
pickets
order.
are standard 6,
Yeah.
so,
You can get them in 6 and 8,
but.
most places, but.
Most standard
You
is
want to pay
6,
for
so.
8. It's just an idea. Anything over 6 feet,
And
pick
the-
it.
I mean, really, you can
Picket
order
size.
And the picket size, yeah.
But, yeah.
And the intent currently was that in that language where
Okay.
footing, when we say footing required by the previous section, not like footing needed for the fence. But I get it, we can clarify a little better. So am I hearing that y'all are comfortable with no engineering till 6 feet, anything above 6 feet, meaning including, after taking the rot board and all of that allowance?
That's my personal feeling, yes.
But your personal feeling is also that you're gonna provide a minimum standard for how many feet in the ground.
The depth for the, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, because that's your problem. That's your problem, how far in the ground they go.
Yeah.
That's where they fall.
Perfect. But that is,
Okay.
this whole fence thing is just one piece.
Yes. It's definitely the one I hear the most talk about. Okay,
So,
on to another horse to beat.
okay, we can move on to the other stuff real quick. The first thing was we added a few definitions, including community fencing for some of the new terms we added. The second item was adding a subsection pertaining to rezoning, which is a standard practice. We didn't have it in our zoning ordinance. However, we default to chapter, I believe, 211 of the Texas Local Government Code, which gives us the requirements in terms of public hearing and some of the minimum things we have to, some of the minimum criteria we have to follow while considering rezoning. So we've captured that as a subsection. We've referenced the section in the Texas Local Government Code. We've referenced our comprehensive plan. We've also included minimum requirements we need for the application process. And I would also want to give you a heads up that once we are done with the comprehensive plan process, we may have to expand it a little bit if we are able to solidify some of the criterias that we specifically want to include. But for now, the amendment is what we are proposing. In addition to that, we are also including a little bit of language for lot size, minimum lot size exemption within open single-family residential district. And this is based on some of our previous experiences we've had where some of these individual lots that are out there includes the street, a portion of the street right away, which means the property goes all the way to the middle of the street. Now, we do have a section which allows for a plat exemption if the property owner is developing it for a single-family home and the property is at least 1 acre and they are dedicating the necessary right-of-way. So when they dedicate the portion of the right-of-way that they have on the property, in a lot of situations, it goes down, it's lesser than 1 acre, and now it is not conforming to the zoning requirement. So then we have to get a variance approved for the zoning requirement. So we thought including that exemption, as long as the reduction is not impacting the construction of a septic system, they get that exemption. Then we have the fences that we discussed at length. And then we have.
Thank you. Thank you for throwing that in there.
No, I mean, we covered everything I meant, sorry. The last item was about building facade requirements. So at one point, we had building facade requirements for non-residential building. We had in 2019 House Bill number 2439, which prohibited cities from directly or indirectly restricting building materials for construction, which is approved in a model code. So we got input from city council that it may be better to remove that section. So up until now, we haven't been enforcing it ever since the adoption of the bill. But just to make sure there's no confusion, better clarity, we are amending it to remove that section completely. And then we have a few typos that we are fixing throughout the document. And that is it. And staff is recommending that we approve this only after including all the input we received from y'all on the fence, which I believe is adding the clarification for the engineering stamp requirement for wooden fences, as we discussed, and also providing the minimum depth for the footing and minimum requirement for the footing.
Okay. Any questions from anybody for that discussion?
So this, any conditional approval of this would be with your changes involved in it? Or if you all need to see this again?
Or if you would want to see it, because we've taken care of the public hearing, right?
Is that something?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you
I
could.
mean, I would love to see it one more time, just for clarity, if nothing else.
Then we would recommend you all table it so we can bring those changes back to you to look at, so you can make that recommendation to council.
Very good.
Then it would look cleaner.
Everybody good with tabling it then? Make a motion to table this?
I'll second that.
All those in favor of tabling it? And the motion passes. Excellent. On to more exciting things. Item C, we did have a conditional approval, so, agenda item C, consideration and possible action to direct staff to provide applicants written statements of the, huh?
There is no vote.
There was, the first one was like,
Applicant.
the first one was conditional, yeah. To provide applicants written statements of conditions for any conditional approvals and the reasons for disapprovals of any plans or plats that were not approved per Texas Local Government Code 212.0091. I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And all those in favor? And the motion carries unanimously, 6-0. Agenda item D, consideration and possible action to approve excused committee member absences. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
And all in favor? And the motion passes unanimously, 6-0. And I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And all in favor? 6-0, that one always does well.